الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي الطاهر الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه الأخيار المنتجبين. على بركة الله نبدأ هذه الجلسة السادسة، التصنيف الاستئماني والالتزام الشرعي. يرأس هذه الجلسة سعادة الأستاذ خالد حمد، عضو مجلس أمناء أيوفي والمدير التنفيذي للرقابة المصرفية في مصرف البحرين المركزي. والمتحدثون في هذه الجلسة سعادة الأستاذ فهيم أحمد، رئيس الوكالة الإسلامية الدولية للتصنيف في البحرين، وسعادة الأستاذ محمد دماك، رئيس قسم المالية الإسلامية وكالة ستاندرد أند بورز للتصنيف الائتماني. والمعقبون سعادة الدكتور وليد حجازي، عضو مجلس الحوكمة والأخلاقيات في أيوفي، محام وشريك في حجازي وشركائه للمحاماة. وسعادة الأستاذ فادي الفقيه، الرئيس التنفيذي لبنك الخرطوم السودان. سعادة الرئيس، الميكروفون لكم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. طبعا هذا اليوم راح يكون آخر فقرة في برنامج المؤتمر، وسنتطرق إلى الالتزام الشرعي أو ما يتعلق بالريتنج، التصنيف الخاص بالالتزام الشرعي. ولأول مرة في مؤتمرات أيوفي يطرح موضوع التصنيف الاستئماني، أو البعض يطلق عليه أيضا التصنيف الائتماني، اللي هو الفيدوشري ريتنج. طبعا بنبدأ إن شاء الله مع الأستاذ فهيم أحمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. First of all, I would like to thank the audience and the organizers, and thank you, Chairman, for leading this discussion. I think we have to be very active to wake all the participants up, because it's a very thin attendance right now. Before I start, it's a very technical subject which we are going to deal with the ratings, because the prevalence of ratings and with the regulatory environment and global market is not very known to the investors other than the mature markets. Shari'ah, if you call Shari'ah governance ratings, my view would be that we have to really go a little behind and see what the regulators think about this non-traditional rating. I stumbled into a paper which was just released on the 11th of October last month by ISCO. ISCO is the major forum for the policy forum for the securities regulators, and the Committee 6 also looks after the rating agencies' code of conduct. I have had opportunities over my 25 years experience with the rating agencies to appear before this committee and to propose certain rules and regulations. As you can see from the slide, the report analyzes the OCPs. Maybe we can put this Shari'ah ratings or the fiduciary ratings into the other CRA's product, or the credit rating agency's product. And you can see there is a plethora of non-traditional ratings which is enforced and or used by the investors for making informed decisions, and the obligors and the investors use these OCPs to appoint the rating agencies for their traditional ratings, what we call the credit ratings. And in my experience, we have also seen now the emergence of ESG ratings. That's very important, like for the environment, social and governance, and then the smart assessments by the microfinance. Before I go into because this is a very structured seminar and we have to address 7 areas which have been predefined, but before I get into this, I will just make a little background on what are the ratings and how the rating agencies have contributed towards the development of the capital markets. The OCP, again I come back to OCP because we are talking about the other credit rating agencies' products like the Shari'ah. And for me, for ERA or for as a rater, I think this information would be very useful for the investors, the regulatory and standard setting bodies, and employees and other stakeholders in IFI. Then the question arises, how the conventional credit ratings agencies are looking at Islamic finance. Islamic finance, unlike conventional banks and the Sharia is the major pillar and the governance, because transparency, ethics is the cornerstone of Islamic finance. And if you look at, because it's in my belief, it is far beyond ethical finance also. Ethical finance somewhere stops from where the faith-based finance starts, and it is governed, of course, by Sharia and fiqh. So I think if the global rating agencies don't include in their assessment this aspect of Sharia, which can bring a credit event, which can bring down an IFI and get it to the liquidators, it's very important. And ignoring Sharia governance or Sharia aspects would lead to information asymmetry, portrayal of unrealistic PDs, because rating agencies for the traditional ratings do predict, or they have a nexus or they have a correlation with the probability of default. And absence of this in the Islamic finance, if they don't take this, could be a major event in disrupting their PDs, which has not been tested yet, of course. And of course, this could be an unexpected credit event. IFC, we have been rating many microfinance. I will just give you a nexus or a comparison between what our microfinance campaign is and how can we relate it to the Islamic finance. In my experience, while rating microfinance, we have seen the first principle nowadays with IFC promotion is the client protection. I stumbled on a paper on 2015 by IFSB. They have a working paper on financial consumer protection. But no standard has yet been drafted by IFSB. There is of course IFSB's 10 which talks about Sharia governance and IFIs. If you look at microfinance, there are rating agencies also which do the client protection certification. Client protection certification is very important. It reflects the Islamic principle, and if you can look at it, promotes the client protection certification. It promotes transparency, responsible financing, responsible pricing, transparency in the terms of product offering, respectful collection practices. You cannot have arm twisting to collect, as the conventional I have seen in my life where they do it, use hard tactics, and the complaint process. And then the confidentiality of the client and the prevention of over-indebtedness. These are the cornerstones. I believe that if we rate the Islamic finance, these should be our main drivers also, in addition to the Sharia. The microfinance, if you look at, is only $110 billion, and there are about 2,000 institutions globally. And look at the advancement of the ratings, where the rating agencies are also giving certification on these ethical parameters. So the question arises, why these rating agencies in traditional ratings are not taking into account the Sharia aspects, which are far beyond the ethical norms. Having said that, look at the quantum, because I have attended so many conferences globally where we keep talking about the asset base of the Islamic finance, like it's rising from 1.5 to 2 trillion, 2 trillion to 3 trillion. That is not the issue. The issue is the quantum of the institutions, where they require a benchmark, a third-party opinion, so that the investors are informed. The regulators can have a benchmark readily. The market could be deepened. So look at, in Islamic finance right now, we have more than 1,000 institutions. We are now doing research on Waqf properties. I stumbled on a number. It could be more than $2 trillion of land in Islamic OIC countries. Look at the enormity of the assets we have which are being unutilized. So we are focusing on Islamic banking. Okay, so now I've just, for your information, I add this, that going forward, we should have the Waqf properties also for in the Islamic finance ratings and other assessments. The Sukuk is already, people know this. These are some of the OIC countries, everybody knows this, that the top 10, 15 countries have banking of 84%. There are non-OIC jurisdictions also. It's very important to understand where they have gotten the licenses under conventional bank. So the Sharia compliance would not work there. And even in OIC countries, there is a lax adaptation of policies for Islamic finance, which can bring in the risks from Sharia non-compliance. So adoption of policies are uneven. AAOIFI, IFSB has been trying very hard to negotiate with the regulators. And for example, like Nigeria, UK, Djibouti, Kenya, they have the licenses under their conventional banks. Although the conventional banks have good practices, but still, if they are not Sharia compliant, if they don't have the regulations of Sharia framework, then I think the reputational risk could induce the credit event and bring discredit to Islamic finance. Now coming to what benefits, like in your agenda, why we talk about and what we expect the benefits. It is the first, I believe in the Sharia, it is my right to know what's happening in the Islamic finance or the bank I'm putting in my money. It's my right. So the first thing is the right to know. And then of course the transparency and disclosure for my satisfaction, because I am the account holder. If we have this benchmark, more disclosure, I think we can increase the savings rate, which is the problem in AAOIC countries. We have a very low, the Turkey which we rate has, I think, about 45% savings rate. So I think there should be a push from the rating agencies or from the ratings of these IFIs to increase the saving rates, and then the non-Muslims can also come, like in Malaysia. We have seen that the non-Muslims are also the account holders. And this will trigger, the ratings will trigger the deepening of the market, which is very essential. The confidence in the general public would come in. In the yesterday's morning session, the World Bank representative has commented that the information is not readily available on Islamic financial institutions. That's very deeply saddens us, that it is my right to know, my Sharia gives me the right, and the regulatory environment does not support me as an investor. Ratings started in 1905 in USA. They even started issuing 100-year bonds, which I know in 1995, one of the railway bonds actually matured. So that gives you a trust, because a third party gives you assessment. So 3 generations you can trust. So you have the trust on the rating agencies. So in the mature environment, the demand for the rating comes through the investors. Even I've seen that there are 2 rating demand independent opinions before they issue issue a bond, or not a sukuk, a bond in the Western countries. Now the question arises, why, do we need a regulatory environment? As I said, that it's my right to know, and if there is uneven adaptation of the rules and regulations, the regulatory push has to come. By the way, in USA also there are certain rules and regulations under which the ratings are mandatory. For example, in pension funds, you cannot invest in certain below rated benchmark, you can get into it. So in a way, USA is also promotes ratings in their own environment. And of course, as the account holders or the investors in non-mature economies are not very sophisticated. So on one hand, the Basel II at least promoted the ratings, and the regulators adopted that. But now in the IFIs, we seldom see a regulatory environment. None in 54 countries where they have made it mandatory to have this Sharia aspect to be input into the main credit ratings, because it is an important factor to understand, to have the assessment. The assessment would never be complete. So the transparency provided by the ratings is beneficial to the investors and for the retail investors who are not very sophisticated. Then how would this impact the credit ratings? We will hear more from S&P maybe. If they start taking the Sharia aspect, how their ratings would evolve now, because they don't consider, they don't take input, if I write what I understand, in their reports also. For us, from ERA, Sharia governance should be the complement, because it's a rating driver. The main rating drivers are the financial aspect, financial strength of the rating agency, of the IFI. Sharia, as I said, it's a very important part. If it is not complemented or not taken into assessment, the absence of non-compliance can trigger a default. And the ratings are all about the PDs, the probability of default. So the credit assessment sans the Sharia aspect for us undermines the accuracy of analysis of IFI. It will not give you the true picture. And for us, it should be the part of the input process in determining the traditional credit ratings. It should be the input into the traditional credit ratings, as because the credit ratings determine the PDs, the probability of default, and absence of Sharia compliance can trigger a credit event. So, meaning, if Sharia compliance is not, or the fiduciary ratings, or the fiduciary aspects are not captured properly into the traditional ratings, the assessment is not complete.
You have 2 minutes left.
I'm just finished. Thank you very much for reminding me. Our framework at ERA, we have now outstanding ratings in more than 14 jurisdictions. We started this concept in 2010 in Pakistan. And now, mashallah, we have progressed. Our reports are very comprehensive because we understand the mutual difference of credit and the fiduciary aspect. So we try to give our views on the Sharia governance, the corporate governance to address gharar, and the asset manager quality, the mudarib function. And I think with time, the regulators, the investors will demand the traditional rating agencies to.
Yes, your brother. Now maybe the turn to Dr. Muhammad from Standard & Poor's.
While waiting for the slide, thank you very much, Chair. First, I would like to thank the AAOIFI and the World Bank for the invitation to this important event. In my presentation, I'm going to cover 3 points. And the first point, I'm going to respond to Mr. Fahim, and I'm going to show how we take into consideration Sharia compliance in our credit ratings. The second part, I'm going to try to demonstrate why, in my opinion, fiduciary ratings or Sharia compliance or governance ratings make sense and little value. I'm going to try to demonstrate that. Thirdly, I'm going to talk about the challenges faced by the industry today and how to move forward. Now, let me move to the first. First, let's go back to basics. What is a credit rating? A credit rating is an opinion, is an independent opinion on the credit quality of an institution or an instrument. So it's not an audit, it's not a recommendation to sell or buy instrument, it's not an indication of a good liquidity, and it's absolutely not an indication that a rating is compliant with Sharia, that an instrument or an institution is compliant with Sharia or no. In terms of what we do in Islamic finance, we do 2 things. We rate Islamic financial institutions, those are Islamic banks and takaful companies, and we rate sukuk. And for the Islamic financial institutions and takaful companies, we use the same methodology that we use for the conventional institution, but when we do the analysis and when we have the discussion, we have in our mind the specificities related to the Islamic banking model or to the takaful model, and I'm going to show you how. For the sukuk, sukuk are different from bonds. Some of the people like to qualify sukuk as the Islamic bonds. I personally hate this qualification because sukuk are totally different from bonds. And with that in mind, we put together a methodology that is specific to rating sukuk. And that, again, when we were designing the methodology, we have taken into consideration the limitations of Sharia or the issues that Sharia will imply in terms of repayment obligation of the sponsor. And I'm going to explain that later on. So first, for the bank rating methodology, we have a methodology in place that we apply equally to Islamic and non-Islamic financial institution. It starts with the BICRA. BICRA stands for Banking Industry Assessment. It's based on 2 pillars, economic risk and industrial risk. The combination gives us the starting point for any of a bank in the world, which is called the ANCOR. And then we have institutions that we have 4 which are risk position, and funding and liquidity. These are the specific applied to the anchor gives us the standard profile or the external support that could come either from a parent or from government towards its banking system, because the bank is the issue of credit trading or headline trading that investors refer to usually. Now, how do we apply that to Islamic banks? In our assessment, for example, of business position, and I think I heard this morning people saying Islamic banks were more stable than are more stable than conventional banks because they have been immune during the global financial crisis, and Islamic bankers are smarter than average and have avoided the global financial crisis. I think just to put things into perspective, Islamic banks have avoided the global financial crisis because it started based on instruments that were based on interest. So instruments where Islamic banks could not invest, and had they been able to invest in these instruments, most probably they would have been equally impacted. This is number one. Number two, when the global financial crisis transformed into an economic crisis, Islamic banks were equally exposed, and were sometimes more exposed because in Islamic finance you need to have an underlying asset. In most of the cases, this underlying asset is made of real estate. So saying that Islamic banks are more stable than conventional banks because they have been immune to the global financial crisis and they should be all rated AAA, I think it's totally factually and totally incorrect. Besides that, you can have some Islamic banks that have pretty risky activity, and I think in Bahrain, I can give you an example, Gulf Finance House and our Capita, which are active in private equity and venture capital type of operation, which by definition are